Lauren Thompson, founder of Roots and Futures and also soon to be co-founder of Citri.
Harris Bider, founder and chief executive of the Forward Institute Building the Future City.
I'm David Williams. I'm chairman of a law firm called Geldards, and I have a number of external interests from universities through local government through charities.
It's a good opportunity to catch up with you because I said I haven't seen you in months. Tell me what's been happening in your world, really. I was going to bring us round into that sort of place-based politics piece that we're talking about earlier and what East Midlands seems to be doing rather well. But tell us what you've sort of been up to.
And which of my worlds you're referring to, because there are quite a lot and I have to switch the chameleon brain around. But if you're referring to the regional devolution world, I'm probably enjoying it more now than I have today. So we're 2 and a bit years into the journey with a mayor. And we have a good mayor and a place-orientated mayor. We spent, and I use this we about so many things, but the word we spent, I didn't spend any time at all, but the organisation spent the first year of its existence really creating itself in terms of offices, computers, policies, all the rest of the stuff. I was monumentally frustrated through that period because I'm incredibly impatient. I'm far too impatient, really.
Join the club.
And
we go straight to governance as well. It's just, you want the do.
We're employing oodles of governance people to govern what? Why have we got all these accountants to account for what?
We're doing it anyway.
Yeah, but then I had to be reminded, and helpfully reminded, that if we're going to be looking after, it's best part of £500 million a year now, you've got to have some governance, you've got to have some structure there, you've got to have some procedures there. So I got to the point, I'm not entirely stupid, but I got to the point of saying, I get it. But that was the first year. We're now in year 2. I can't live with that anymore. We've got to start doing some stuff. And we've actually, more than that, we've got to start doing some stuff, obviously.
Yeah.
Because although I don't play, I suppose we all play politics, because although I don't play politics, I understand that the political situation requires that we are seen to do stuff, because otherwise we'll get to the end of the 4 years and we will get the, who are they? What are they? What do they ever do for us? And if the answer is, well, we're this new political construct and we spent a couple £100 million. Sorry, you've not noticed it. That's a really difficult one politically to answer. Not a difficult one for me, who is not in the politics, if I can understand what we are actually doing. But I need to understand what we were doing in the second year. And it felt like painfully little. It was probably as much as we could have done. We're now into year 3, and this is being billed as the year of delivery, which I do scratch my head a little bit about, because we're not a delivery body.
No.
We're a coordinating, policy setting, strategic body. So there is an increasing expectation that we will be filling in the potholes when that's really not our job. And it should be billed the year when we made things happen.
Yeah.
So the year when we enabled X to do Y, the year when we positioned a local authority so it could attract that with investment. We provided that connectivity. We were this set of wires leading into a cabinet which made everything happen. And I think we're inching there. And if you saw us at UK Reef, we were quite impressive, actually, I think. I'm a real cynic as well. I thought we were really quite impressive. And it's interesting when you're out. So there's 2 things I do that I never thought I would do for EMCA is I'm on the stump quite a lot talking about EMCA. And that's given me a fair amount of grief from time to time.
Because of not so friendly fire.
Yeah. I've been rinsed a few times, and I keep reminding myself I'm not elected and I'm not paid. I really don't need this. I've forgotten what the same thing was now, but it's the other part of it for me, it's not the second thing, but the other part of it is because I chair the business board, I have, off my own back, recruited 12 people for the business board. And all enforced on me, all people I've recruited. Proper procurement process, but recruited. And they are busy people and able people and invested people and place-orientated people. And I've got a responsibility to give them a very heavily meat-filled diet. Because if I don't keep them entertained and keep them feeling they're making some kind of difference, they'll vote with their feet. And, you know, if you've got examples like Toyota and Rolls-Royce at one end and some significantly influential SMEs at the other, you don't want them voting with their feet, because if they're disengaged, then you've got a real problem in there.
And credibility, isn't it?
Credibility. And then there's personal credibility as well.
Yeah.
So it's challenging and fascinating, but I've just been asked to do another 2 years. So
well, congratulations.
So they can't find anyone else. But that was always the deal. I said I'll do it prior to the mayor being elected. And if whoever gets elected doesn't like me, fine, I'll walk. If I don't like whoever's elected, I'll walk. Or if a year in it doesn't work, well, you know, no hard cheese, I just walk away. It's not my life.
So out of those green shoots then that you started talking about in year 3, you can realistically see that future where actually it's paid off.
I think. I mean, if you can't do anything with £500 million, then it's a bit disappointing, really. The danger is you spread that £500 million too thin and you don't have any real impacts. And that's probably the biggest tension for me.
Is it one of the risks around combined authorities is, as is a risk in terms of councils as well, if you have politicians leading it, sure, they go into politics, want to do lots of really wonderful stuff, but fundamentally their job is to get re-elected. Whatever the cycle is. So it's one of the problems is that as soon as you get elected, the clock starts ticking. And the closer you get to an election, if you want to be re-elected, then you're going to focus in on stuff that will get you re-elected. And is there a case to think, okay, can we do politics slightly differently by having an office for long-term investment that all the parties, you'll sign up to the...
Trouble is, Treasury can rip it all up and start it again.
Of course they can. Yeah.
So, yes, in theory. I came up with something a few years ago, which I got East Midlands agreement to from the 4 unitary authorities, which was, having seen this sort of from the inside, if local governments run by, let's say, 4 politicians in a cabinet plus 4 senior officers, why don't you balance that? So you've got the short-termism of the politicians, the fact that the officers effectively are employees and can be pushed into doing things they wouldn't otherwise do. Why don't you balance it by adding, say, 4, what I would term modern aldermen to the group? So there'd be 4 independent busybodies, but people of stature, hopefully, who could actually maybe temper the worst excesses of the politicians, who could bring some wisdom to the party. And I got agreement to this from all the upper-tier authorities. And I actually got to see Theresa May about it. But the story quickly is I get invited down to number 10 to talk to her about it. Because I said I want some money.
Yeah.
I just want a bit of money just to throw around to make, so that people realise I'm not talking about a lot. So I got invited number 10. I get to the station at Derby and it's howling gale and the trains are all stuffed. So I think I was due on at 10 or 11 o'clock. And I get to London about 1 o'clock. And I turn up outside the gates number 10 and say, I'm here to see the Prime Minister. And the policeman goes, you're not on the list. And I said, no, you need to look. You're on the list. And he said, oh yeah, I've got you here. He said, well, you're too late. I said, no, I've come all the way from Derby. I'm not too late. He said, I know for a fact she's in with the Australian Prime Minister. I said, well, no, nothing to me. I've come from Derby, so I'm expecting to see her. All right. Well, you better go in and you can sort yourself out then. Got your ID? Shit. No. Forgot to bring any ID. So this is really good, isn't it? You come to see the country's Prime Minister, you're 2 or 3 hours late, you've got no ID. Yeah. I don't suppose you've got anything on you. I said, well, I've got my Sainsbury's Nectar card, jokingly. And he said, that'll do. Go in. So I just went in. I went in through the door number 10. And because I wasn't expected, nobody sort of picked me up. So I was just wandering around, really, until Gavin Browning, that's the name, of Theresa May's Chief of Staff. Yeah. So you can see her Chief of Staff. So that's how I first met him, So I pitched it to him, got approved, pitched it to Treasury, got approved. I got £1 million, just £1 million for each council. And then, of course, Theresa May went and, crashed and burned. So it went away. But that was my way of maybe levelling the field out a bit.
I think that's really interesting because those conversations probably need to be revisited given where politics has become fragmented. And as we were talking earlier, the two-party list system is, according to John Curtis, as a doyen of political analysis and elections, and he says we're into a multi-party system. And I think when I've spoken to leaders within anchor institutions like universities or in business or civic organisations in a city the size of Birmingham, their frustration with politicians is that they run big organisations and they're judged on results and they've got capability and skills, and they feel they want to do good for a place but don't feel any ways that they can influence or engage around a city like Birmingham, which, after all, they want a city like Birmingham to be successful because it brings in investment, it brings in people investment and financial investment, and they don't see any way. So that model that you articulated to Theresa May around having a space for the modern-day alderman or a civic standing board that you can take into account when you're making a decision as politicians and officers. I think there's something in that. And I think there's something in that in giving confidence to electors that there's people who have a track record of doing something different who are inputting into decision-making or what are very complex organisations.
Yeah, and if you take organisations around our city here that employ tens of thousands of people, they ought to have input into what investments are being made, what decisions are being made, because that directly affects their organisation. It might be a transport decision, it might be a further education course decision, whatever it is going to have an impact. So they ought to bring that wisdom to the party. But if I'm a local politician without, should we say, the biggest experience of the world,
yes,
and I'm about to take a decision, but somebody with the experience of, let's say, Mr. Rolls-Royce says, actually, I'm not sure that I think I would like to hear that advice. I'd like to think I'd like to hear that advice. I might not go with it, but I'd like to think I'd like to hear that advice. And also, I think I'd be quite brave to ignore it.
Yeah.
I think it feels like a good point to go back to the conversation where we're sort of talking about the combined authorities and their role in convening. And I suppose my challenge there is actually, are they doing enough of that? Because we're all talking here around the importance of the business voice. We're starting to hear a lot more in terms of your place-based strategies and things like that, starting to turn towards community power and actually evidence in how people are in those informed decisions. And a lot of it does focus on grassroots, not necessarily always the business voice either. And going back to that same thread where we're talking about we're in year 3, it's about delivery and evidence in something. Has enough convening happened? We have got lots of frameworks and strategies, but if you go down to, where I live, say, for example, Chelliston, would they know who AMCA is? Would they feel that they've been convened?
The answer is no, and I think you could probably never do enough. But I think even the very act of convening is quite hard, because if you're having to explain what you're convening about, it's hard to get people to the convention. So around my table of 12, 14 business board members, there is a group there that gets it in the wider business community, which ought to be aware of what's happening. Most people probably won't. There's an awful lot of effective PR work to be done, I think, an awful lot. Problem is the times, the clock's ticking on it in terms of the next mayoral election. Yeah. And I don't want the next mayoral election to be about what's MCA. I would like it to be about wow, it's doing X, Y, and Z. Who's the best person to run it?
Yeah, and it's
not about the fundamentals.
Something like structure like combined authorities. I was just sort of reflecting in terms of what the problem is, in terms of the awareness that people on the ground have about combined authority. Is it about structures or is it about people? Because if you have, it seems to me that in politics, the thing that's traded stocks are high is that if you're relatable, if you have a personality, if you can engage with the person on the street, so to speak. And not every politician is going to be like that.
No, and I mean, I used to be able to say, we're the meat in the sandwich between the two Andys, because we did have two strong characters who had a presence and a persona. Didn't make them necessarily great, either of them.
Yeah.
But they actually had a persona, and they were out there. And as you say, not everybody's like that.
No.
But I'm not sure I'm a big fan of politics done presidentially. Everything we see recently suggests that presidential politics with a small p can be quite alarming. So I go back to where I started with it all, the place before politics. In a perfect world, it wouldn't matter who the mayor was.
Yeah.
The thing would be what it was all about.
Yeah.
It would exist. People would feel warm to it. And whoever was leading it would be incidental. Yeah. The better if the leader is approachable and interesting and dynamic and personable. But it's the thing that matters more than the leader, and that's the thing we're trying to preserve. It's the thing we're trying to establish, as opposed to some.
And I think Richard Parker, who succeeded Andy Street, is, and I know because I spoke to him last week at an event that we both had. He came into politics for the best of reasons. He was a technocrat, and he was a non-politician, and his focus was on sorting stuff out at the West Midlands Combined Authority, just as you've described, David. But then it's on delivery. So Richard would say that one of the biggest achievements that he's had is getting the train stations in South Birmingham open to get that transportation connectivity from a big chunk of the population in Birmingham who couldn't get into the city centre without it taking like half an hour, 40 minutes to travel a few miles. And that's had a massive impact. So the train stations opened up on the Camp Hill line from Sturchley, Kingsheath and Moseley, which, are sort of quite prosperous neighbourhoods. There's statistics from data from West Midlands Train, 95,000 people, been 95,000 journeys in the first couple of months. So actually they're popular. And I said to Richard Parker, I said, you got to take credit for that because you found the budget for it and you got it over the line and to do it. So Richard is very much into delivery and he may not want personal credit for it, but get the credit for the organisations who's doing that or convening to do that delivery. And it's the same for the new stadium that Birmingham City is developing because Tom Wagner said, we want to build this new stadium, but you need to provide get the land sorted out. You need to get some investment in it. And I think it's that
they're all dangerous subjects, those, aren't they? Because if you look where Andy Burnham's gone with putting his heft behind New Old Trafford, which at the moment appears to, gone quite quiet.
It's gone very quiet, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a difficult subject. And it would be really good if in the East Midlands we could find a thing or two which the mayor could attach their brand to, something that was...
What's that? Symbolism.
Yeah, but that's right.
It's a very different...
So the problem for EMCA is this time scale, only 2 years in, discovering the thing, financing the thing, and then getting the thing built or developed is challenging. And the accelerated timescale we're on says it's taken Steve Rotherham in Liverpool, it's taken it took the Handies some years to get where we've got.
Yes.
And because I sit around a table now with business advisory board chairs from across the country on a fairly regular basis. And you've got your Northern Powerhouses, West Midlands, West Yorkshire, who've been around, been there, done it. Their business sports are about 300 people. I exaggerate, but they're all over it. But they've now got so far down in the weeds, I don't think they can see, the wood for the trees, to mess up the analogy. But and then so that's one group, the old school. Then there's the recently formed, and we're actually looked at with quite a lot of interest because we can take lessons from what the old school have done, how they've established themselves, how they behaved, all the rest of it, things that have worked, things that have not. And they're looking at us and saying, it's all right for you because you've got a clean sheet of paper. You can do some stuff. You can form your, transport authority in a new model in the way that you want. And then you've got the third group, the have-nothings. So those that don't have devolution are just sitting there around the table glumly saying, I wish we could partake in this conversation. So there is a moment in time for EMCA to seize this thing while we're in a honeymoon period, while government is looking on us very favourably. Claire is very close to Keir and to the current incumbents of government. So there is a time, but it's a speed thing. Can we go quick enough to make an impact to make people really believe in us?
And I can challenge that a little bit, because I think in terms of what we've got with the East Midlands, and if we keep it just looking at the combined authority, you've got big city Nottingham, and then you've got the smaller city Derby, and they've got completely different challenges. And actually Nottingham has almost got that big city vibe in the same way that Birmingham has, Manchester has. Whereas I think my lived experience at the moment coming into Derby is it's a lot more sort of pointy elbows. We hear that there's quite a lot of funding coming through. So similar, I was speaking to Vaggie Shankar last week, right, we've got £10 million from Team Derby. Mm-hmm. We've got to spend it. But again, you go straight into that. Actually, it's a great sum of money, but we've got to go through all of the governance for that. And Harris, you'll know this because you've been supporting me for like the last week. I got a very small proposal declined. Incredibly impactful, working with teenagers in the city, 30 to 40, to do a pilot over the summer. And the instant challenge was, well, we've got a very similar proposal. It's a couple of £1,000 more. We've had that on the table for 4 or 5 months. We've not funded it. Working with a very similar sort of demographic, based from the sort of vulnerable space, much rather I'm sort of looking at that working class, aspiring middle class, actually how we provide the provision for them so they aren't also left behind. And it instantly gets stuck in we haven't funded them, so we don't think we can fund you. But then you go, well, I'm only looking at 30 to 40 children. There's tens of thousands in the city. We can run them in parallel. And so I find Derby very different to this. It gets quite competitive. I'm the only person that can deliver it. Whereas if you go to somewhere like your bigger cities, you can run those concurrent projects and programs. So I do find a big difference, whereas I feel like if I'm operating in Derby, I'm left to be very independent. I've got to raise the capital. I've got to take all of the risks to do something that I think is quite important.
I think we felt really interested to get David's views, but I think there's a world difference in terms of sort of large city, how stuff gets done. And I spoke to someone who moved from London to Birmingham about 20 years ago. He runs Birmingham Settlement now. And he said the biggest difference that he found in coming from the largest city in the UK to the second largest city in the UK was it in London, you'd have lots of collaboration between the different boroughs in London. Almost like, oh, you've done this. How did they do? Because we may want to test and trial it here. And collaboration across sectors and boroughs. In Birmingham, he found a lot of parochialism. Now, this is a city of 1 million people plus. Says, you may have done that in London, but this is the way we do it here. So it's our Birmingham. But so very parochial and quite inward looking as opposed to looking outside. And I guess in somewhere like Derby, which is smaller still, that sort of sharp elbows, a smaller pot and lots of established organisations and like Roots and Futures as a new organisation coming in. They would say, well, never mind that you grew up in the city. You've been, we've been doing all this sort of hard work. We're going to protect our patch. And I suppose my question to David would be, is there a better way to join the fragmented landscape between different organisations doing the same types of things? Is there any way that MCA could influence the distribution of investment and support? It's money, but it's non-pay as well. To say, well, this is a framework that we want. We want to cut out waste. We only want to be additive. You need to collaborate.
Well, it is.
Yeah,
it is. But before I touch on that, a lot of this is about attitude to risk, I think. And so with a lawyer's head on, I often think that I need to see about 90% of the game before I plunge in. Most of my clients only need to see about 50, 60% of the game, and then they're all in. They'll sort the rest out as they work it through. And I think that applies to government as well, local government in particular. So I'm in a very small way, trying to urge MCA to accept risk, whatever it means. And of their X million, let's say 10%, should we just chucked out there like bread on the water? And some of it will get nibbled up.
Yeah.
Some of it will just sink without trace. But they'll have done some stuff without waiting for it to be too late when they've gone through a procurement process that the issue is gone, or they kind of like it, but there's something competing. So just I've got to say this is the one I wish that we could just have a pot that was, outside the procurement processes. Yeah. But in answer to your question, really more specifically, you've got to start somewhere. So you did have a fairly fragmented, almost postcode broken system of dealing with inward investment, dealing with the visitor economy, and dealing with business support. So as a mayor, you've got to pull that together, because you can't, it's not right to say, well, you can get all the business support you like in Swaddling Cove, but you can't get any in Glossop for the sake of argument. So it's a big job for a mayor to pull all of that together geographically, but it's got to be done. I think you cannot be MCA without saying there is, it's not one size fits all, but there is a coverage for the whole patch. All of the map has got to be covered in. So starting with the business support piece, okay, UK SPF disappears, so there is diddly squat in terms of funding. In fact, there's nothing in terms of central government funding. So it's what MCA can find, and MCA found some. So business support is still there. It's on life support, but there's enough to keep it going so that we can hopefully build it back again. There's work now being done on how do you bring together the inward investment piece across the patch so that there is a focus on MCA. So for foreign direct investment, people know where to look as opposed to having to go down to a very small geographic level. how do you keep the investment piece going across the whole of the two counties, but keep what was good about what the two cities were doing? So Marketing Derby has a particularly strong reputation. Invest in Nottingham is also very good. How do you keep that actually place-based system going within a larger whole? So they're doing that, and that's a way of using the funding responsibly and a way of covering the geography. But then similarly, they're moving on to the visitor economy. So we now have Invest East Midlands, but we also have Visit East Midlands. Challenge with both is, what is the East Midlands brand? Yeah. Nobody understands the East Midlands brand yet, if they ever actually will. And if they do think they understand it, they think it includes Leicester and Leicestershire, which obviously it doesn't.
I got told it was sausages, pork pies, elephant's feet, and
Really?
Robin Hood. But there's quite a lot of food in that.
As someone who's like outside, that seems like a random collection of stuff.
Yeah, that's an interesting bit of feedback. So that you've got a very disparate visitor economy offer. You've not got enough visitor stays, overnight stays, but you've got lots of people pouring into the Peak District for an afternoon and going away. But they're trying to work on that across the piece as well. So I think, given it's only 2 years, the fact that they've grasped two nettles which are quite thorny politically, and there's a lot of parochiality about potentially, I think he's quite brave. But it seems, touch wood, to be working.
So that, can I just say that the narrative, because that's, and you spoke about place earlier on, that place should trump politics, and I agree. But then places should have a narrative if they're going to do all the things that you've said on it. And if you're a big combined authority like Greater Manchester, and you've got a city like Manchester, and then combined authority like Birmingham, you've got a city like Birmingham. These are cities that have had several narratives. And then the challenge for like Birmingham is, okay, we had this narrative as one of the first industrial cities, and everything that went with the pioneers of like Cadbury and Chamberlain and others. But we need to modernize that. And so what is our narrative now? That will drive the visitor economy and investment, and in a sense, what people are buying when they choose Birmingham. And I guess that's the same thing. I would say that places like Manchester and Birmingham perhaps have it easier because they've got a lot to build on in terms of institutions. And the East Midlands, I find, is a really interesting place, because then why should you invest in the East Midlands? What do you get that you can't get from the West Midlands or Greater Manchester or and London? If you're going to chuck in like 100-200 million pounds worth of.
I mean, there is an argument there, though, isn't there? That it's the centre of the country. It's on the M1, it's on the A1, it's on a direct rail line to London. It's got everything in terms of connectivity. It's got everything in terms of quality of life with the countryside. Yeah. It's got, if I do need to be in London, Manchester or Birmingham, I can do it very, very easily. It's got low land values, low housing prices, and it's got a fairly skilled workforce, depending on, if you're looking at advanced manufacturing in particular, it's got a pretty skilled workforce. So there is a lot to say about it. Does that coalesce under the brand East Midlands? I'm really not quite sure, no, because...
No, and it is something that needs to be grasped, because I think even, I went to Anthropy and I went to loads of different foundations and organisations. What are you doing in the East Midlands? What are you funding? What are you supporting? How are you investing? One project? No projects? No, we're going to the north and we're going to London. So you get that flyover state.
Yeah.
And then in terms of stuff that's sort of, talking about like getting Joe Wolf to come up and talk about the addiction economy and, really modern thinking about mental health around technology and so forth. And actually, those modern conversations aren't coming to the East Midlands because, again, it's just...
No, with the flyover.
Flyover. I kind of want to move away from MCA and politics. We've given that quite a lot of ground. You mentioned your career as a lawyer. And it'd be just great to sort of run through how you ended up doing what you do at Geldards.
I'm not sure.
I love this story. I do. It's got a fantastic one about you and your daughter in the Grand Canyon as well.
I haven't heard the story, so I'm all ears.
Yeah. But that isn't connected to your law firm.
So my dad died when I was a little kid. When I was 2.5. He was a lawyer. So I think there was some DNA thing there. But my dad was a big character, physically and figuratively, in court all the time, larger than life. I'm not that character. So I don't know how much of that influenced me. I think I only became a lawyer because I didn't really want to start work. But
It's back to the beginning. Go to university. Put it off.
I'll go to university, then I'll go to law school and do a conversion course. I'll go and do another year and qualify. But you come to the end of it and you kind of think, well, I probably better do something. My first instincts at university were I was offered jobs in marketing by Ford and Unilever and Mars and people like that. And that I kind of fancied doing because it seemed an awful lot of money at the time. And I got a car, which I couldn't drive, but I got a car. But I was deeply in love at that time, and I still am, to the same person. And she was in a place where none of these organisations were. So I thought, I can't be doing with that. So I better find a different way. So I thought, well, I'll try this law stuff then. My colleagues would tell you they're not really interested in my capabilities as a lawyer. I don't really like black letter law. It's not the hobby that it is for many lawyers. But I actually like using the law to help people. And I mean help people because I actually like people achieving their objectives. I'm a non-contentious person rather than a contentious person. So I couldn't ever help people in terms of suing or defending, but I can help people make sure they don't make mistakes. That's sort of my kind of law. So I got into law, ended up with Eversheds, got my sort of training there, qualified there, got my initial very good experience there, then fell out with them. And became a property developer and a estate agent. There's a theme here. Then fell out with them and became...
I thought you were non-contentious.
I am. They fall out with me, I think, is the thing.
They just wanted a fight and wouldn't give it.
And then I became general manager of a large building society. I think they got the wrong David Williams. So ultimately I fell out with them or they fell out with me. So I was wondering what to do with my life, knowing that I needed to feed my born child and yet to be born child, and keep a roof over our heads. And we were living in South Wales at the time. We bought an old farm, taking the roof off it. We're completely renovating. So I went to my current firm's office in Cardiff and said, "Have you got anything for me? Because I'm obviously outstandingly talented. So you've surely got something for me, haven't you?" And they said, "Well, actually, we're rather overstuffed with property lawyers, which you are." And I could see out of the window, literally could see out the window, Alice and my wife sitting with Jack on her knee and with a bump there as well, thinking, this isn't going too well, really. This period where I'm being paid on garden leave is going to expire at a point. And the two of them who were talking to me looked at each other and said, "But we are going to open an office in Derby." And I thought, what the flipping next to that? It's somewhere near Birmingham, I think. I'm from Lancashire. It's somewhere near Birmingham. But I better appear interested for Alison's sake as much as anything else, so she can see that I'm making some attempt. And the long story short is they brought me up to Derby, where we're taking a brand new building, and they said, "Look, all this could be yours, my son." And I couldn't resist. So I abandoned Alison, which I feel guilty about for every day for the last however many years it's been since, for 20 months, while she was giving birth and finishing the house. And I was, meanwhile, up in the Midlands, establishing myself. In a sense, it was the best thing because Sunday night to Friday lunchtime, I could think of nothing but work, and I could be out every night, and I was out every night. So I built my black book very, very quickly. And the rest really is history. So by next year, I've just been with the firm 37 years now, which is astonishing after all of the fallings out every 2 or 3 years prior. I will have been chairman for 20 years next year. And I think that's astonishingly bad governance. Somebody by now should have said, could you please clear off? And it's not clever either, because, you need new ideas, you need new blood and all the rest of it. But I'm supposed to be elected every 4 years, and I don't think we've bothered for about 10 or 12. It's like Putin now.
It's a dictatorship.
Maybe
you don't know it.
They're just stuck with me. Yeah. So that's the story. And then I'm shy, introverted by actual character and definition. But somehow I built a veneer that I was happy to talk to people. I don't really do networking in the charging into a room, chatting to everybody in sight sense. But if I can pin one person in a corner, then, I'm going to have a convert, generally speaking. So I built that veneer up, and that veneer led me into all the other stuff I do, because people started asking me to do things, get involved in things. Unfortunately for me, the firm was happy for me to do so, because I think the view is it spreads the firm's fame, it gives us credibility, it establishes in our marketplace. So for the last 15-ish years, that's probably, don't tell everybody in the office, but it's probably pretty much all I do. I don't do a lot of lawyering. And I think the insurers would be entitled to know if I started lawyering again.
And that was quite an understatement, actually, because I think you were an absolute anchor in terms of even just doing the research for the podcast. It was, even on the brief, it's like, I've run out of listing all the things that you do and are involved with.
I think I mustn't know how to say no. I'm very, very organised with my time, very efficient with my time, quite brutal. I mean, your emails to me are usually a page. My emails back to you are usually yes or no.
I'm neurodivergent, that's why I have to go.
Yeah.
And then I'm done. I'm happy with one sentences back.
Yeah. So
you told me to start using AI, which I really need to do.
That was brilliant. I use Copilot all the time.
I do. I do.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. So I've inserted myself in these positions, but I don't quite know how. And if anybody's got anything about them's got imposter syndrome, I think if you haven't got imposter syndrome, you're really dangerous.
But I think I do, because right at the start of our discussion, you said that you wanted to help people. And I think the fact that I was just listening, it's a remarkable story. And I think you've sort of self-described introvert, and that sense of when you're at a conference and you've got a room full of people and you have to do this sort of fake networking and do it. Even someone who my friends and family think sort of naturally just gravitate and engage with, I hate all that sort of stuff. But you do it and you give this veneer around it. But actually, because you're introverted and you're ruthless with your time, once you focus in on a person, you will make that relationship work. And I think what people like is being validated and valued, and to have a proper discussion to find out if we have a Venn diagram, what's the overlap? So yeah, my organization gain, you can gain, and we can do business. And I always think that I've said this to Lauren, I know there's some people have said to me in business, is that business is it's a transactional thing. Do I like this person? Do I trust this person? Can they do something for me? Are we going to have fun doing it?
Well, it's crucial for my industry, because we're a grudge purchase. Nobody wants to spend time with a lawyer. Nobody wants to engage a lawyer. It usually means there's some massive crisis in your life, which you need digging out of. And it could be personal, it could be divorce, it could be business, you're being sued. Or on the other side of the coin, it could be you're about to make a load of money, or something's going really well. Under no circumstances do you want to share that situation with somebody else. And certainly not at a cost of hundreds of pounds per hour. So we're a massive grudge purchase. And I tried to talk to all my colleagues about this. So the least you can do is try and make it pleasant for the purchaser. The least you can do is try and take the pressure off them, absorb the problem as if it were your own, and then leave them in a better place than when they started, because then at least the grudge purchase will have felt it had some value to it. And if you add to that value, I've got a relationship now with somebody I can trust, and actually even better, that I quite like, then they're going to come back again.
And is that something, just listening to you again, so going back to governance, place, politics, is that something that MCA can always learn from in terms of how to do business, how to position themselves, less of a remote organization that is far away from the lives of the people and the businesses that it wants to engage with? That sort of philosophy. So it's like the doing of business. So you're not this sort of almost, and this is not a good example, but you're not this almost like Soviet type inaccessible place that tells people, you do this, otherwise we're going to punish you. But almost, and it's a phrase that's been used a lot. I don't know how helpful it is, but co-creating. This is our place. This is where we're in the East Midlands. What are your views? This is what we want to do, but what are your views, and how can we recalibrate that investment or that significant project, whether it's around transportation or whatever it is? Is there something that MCA as an institution can learn from business as you've relayed it?
I'm honestly not sure that I can teach our mayor very much. I think she certainly gets this. She's there with this stuff. The challenge for the mayor is taking everybody with her on this journey. And that's a big challenge with such a diverse group that she's got to look after around the board table, and then the whole wider 2.2 million people on the patch. That's a really big challenge. There is a challenge, isn't there, by trying to be all things to all men. And the Andes rose above that challenge by having a degree of extremism about them. And that seems, well, it wasn't successful ultimately for Andy Street because he lost out, but that might have been national politics rather than local. But they had to have some flavour to them, which added to their mix, which made them more popular, possibly, and certainly more high profile. You learn all the time, don't you? And I'm very late in my career, I'm learning something that. So if you take my firm, we've always had a 5-year strategy, and probably 50% of them I've written or co-written. They've all been brilliant, obviously, but have any of them been enacted now? They've been fascinatingly, brilliantly written documents which have sat in people's drawers until somebody realised it's time to write a new one. And various colleagues have said to me, it's time that we embarked on the new writing. And I said, look, I will not be around in a finite period of time, quite a short finite period of time. So it's not for me to write anymore. And they probably went, well, thank God. Let's do it. But the colleagues who grabbed hold of it have taken an entirely different approach. And they've co-created it. We are 335 people in our organisation. They've co-created it, or are co-creating with all of the 335 people who want to cooperate. And as they're going through the process, they're explaining why certain things are going into the strategy and pitching them effectively. And if the pitch doesn't succeed, they're rowing back somewhat. So I'm observing firsthand, quite enviously actually, something which I think is quite good, that we will have a co-created strategy. And underpinning that strategy, we're a business, we've got to make money, is what does it all mean financially? Now, we've always done that, but in a way that's meaningless. It means our turnover will be X, it means our profit margin will be Y, so on. But now it's being explained why we need to grow, why we need to be the profit margin, to be so and so. I think that's what EMCA need to be doing. We've got best part of £500 million. This is where it's going. This is how it's affecting you. So EMCA's in the process of producing, still I think they're quite straightforward enough, but a set of KPI diagrams. And my perfect world is like a sheet of A4 when you can say, this is what EMCA did for you. This is what's red, green and amber on it. This is what we're getting on with. This is what we're not getting on with. And the second page is, here's a map of the patch. And these, so where there is a colouring here, that's where there was an investment. This is the area that investment benefits. So if there were a new data centre, Radcliffe-on-Soar, we've improved the transport, so the jobs accessibility reaches out to this kind of range. Now, it's easy for 335 people to get their heads together, much harder for 2.2 billion people. But I think that element of as we do in my firm, we share all of our information internally. There's nothing secret whatsoever. I think we need to be much the same as EMCA about telling the world exactly how it is.
Well, I think it's all sort of going on that journey. And I mean, I'm a huge fan of participatory strategy. I've done strategies for departments the size of 20,000 people to actually our civil service as a whole, which is circa 500,000 people. And you get to that sort of scale when you're trying to get an organisation to do its strategy. And there is part of it which is very much connected into the treasury, which is actually what are the finances, what are the priorities, what can we afford to do? You hear me talk quite a lot about actually what are those service lines, sort of strip away, and that's quite a function really. But actually that bit that you're going through at the moment with 330 people, it's wonderful as somebody who does strategy, and it's a real art form in terms of trying to get that whole essentially ocean tanker to start rowing in the right direction.
I think when David was talking about Geldards and the way that you're doing the strategy, but actually, theoretically, there shouldn't be anything stopping bigger organisations doing that, because as has been said, for the first time in the history of human beings, you have to have tools that can scale up and you can use and deploy to get that information out and get a response from 2.2 million people.
It's scary though, because it's exposing. And that's the bit about participation that sort of organisations will sort of move away from that process. It's a lot easier as a leader or as a chief executive to sit there and go, my strategy, everybody aligns to it. This is what I've got to achieve. Therefore, the targets come underneath it. So it's trying to give that permission really within the organisation.
If you're a mayor like Claire and EMCA, and you want to lead by example, and you're very well connected, and you know that in the market of politics, that if you're a non-politician, that's what people are buying at the moment. And you say, do you know what, I'm going to co-create this. There's 2.2 million people. You're all stakeholders in this. We're going to use this to get that one-page document to you, and you come back, and we'll get AI to crunch it, and we'll come up with some themes on it. There is a way of doing it, though, isn't it? To take your example.
There is.
To that scale.
I think consultation at scale, everyone's scared of, because experience says that you don't get many people responding through the more traditional means. As in, you've put something on your website and say, please respond and tell us whether you think we should increase rates in Eastwood. I mean, the answer is no, obviously, to that question. But people are scared of consultation, I think. I probably historically within my own organisation, I'm sometimes wary of asking people what they think, because I might not like the answer.
Everyone always has to vent, so that's the bit.
Yeah. But then if you extend that and say, well, I did a consultation about, shall I switch the waterfall back on in Derby City Centre, and we got 18 people responding. Well, yeah, the hell? But everybody in politics knows they've got to consult because they effectively consult every time there's an election, but they know they've got to consult. But there must be a better way. Technologically, you're right. There must be a better way of doing it to make people be interested. But if I'm, we'd probably all hate getting questionnaires. Every time we go and stay in a hotel or go to a restaurant, we're asked to feedback, and you're bloody hell. Really?
I just want to pay my bill and go.
That's what. Yeah, I'm not interested. And I will only feedback if it's just yes, no, or 1 to 5. If it's fill in the box, get lost. I'm not fill in the box. Yeah. And that's when I've been to a restaurant or a cinema or somewhere I know about. If it's, I'm asking you to consult on the new transport strategy or new housing requirements across the patch or skills gaps, that's so hard to engage with, I think.
I think technology is kind of, we've had all that sort of audit-ang plurality, and we've got the national conversation at the moment, again, a tech-driven platform. And actually think more in terms of those that have sort of commissioned in this area, your sort of deliberative democracy practices, have traditionally been your sort of Whitehall think tanks have started to come in. And actually what I've found in terms of them following up with actually how did those processes go, every single person that's commissioning has gone, it was too pacey, it didn't achieve the results, very similar. It's consultation. We had 18 people out of a potential 30,000 engage with this. And I think we are starting to get back to that more sort of analogue. Actually, how do we sort of use that art, that legislative theatre? How do we have those face-to-face conversations? At UK Reef, Ion Development, they gave a really good presentation on Derby Made. And it was really interesting. It was a conversation around our arts centres and how developers should be investing in arts centres a lot more. And it was very interesting to sit as somebody who was from Derby, who they didn't know was in the audience in Derby, actually pitch. And actually, it's a fantastic development. There's a lot of innovation there. It was really great to hear the developer talk about how they'd consulted with the council and actually sort of designed something with the library, the art, the way that the space moves. And it's very much, well, there's a story in there that isn't getting locally. And actually in conversations since, I've been a bit like, well, I think you kind of underplayed actually how much citizens and the press has almost been quite campaigning against the development and that sort of standing through. And again, it's starting those conversations of, well, what can we do now that can be a bit more about bringing in that voice, but also simultaneously reducing some of that friction. And for me, that can't be achieved by another national conversation, another digital project.
At a hyperlocal and work with organisations to have legitimacy.
And like Nottingham does, we'll have a big long table in the market square. Well, let's just do something a little bit more fun that people can get energised around. Again, it comes back to that brand. But I am starting to worry more as I'm starting to get the feedback of those that have come in and have done nothing rooted with the communities or are going to said communities who do have the roots, who are going, that national organisation's got quite a lot of thousands of pounds that I really need just to stay here. Why should I give my knowledge? And why should I let you into the communities that I'm custodian of? So it's a bit that we've sort of got to think about. That nurture for me needs to be thought about a lot more.
And I think actually, again, David, is if you think about the East Midlands as an ecosystem, as a space that's full of people, full of organisations, full of community organisations, we're at Eastwood Community Football Club, are rooted within communities, are trying to reach out and engage and be a hub in this area.
I don't think I understood this until I moved to the East Midlands, and then I got involved with and went on a course with an organisation called Common Purpose.
Yes.
Which you obviously remember. I think I mentioned it to you before, but before your time. Unfortunately, not really extant in the UK anymore. But what Common Purpose did, as I've explained before, was it put in our room once a month for a year, again, 6 people from the third sector, 6 people from the private sector, 6 people from the public sector, who would never otherwise, generally speaking, meet. And there were heavily organised days, and each day was themed. So there might be a Justice Day. And I remember on the Justice Day going to a prison and sitting in front of somebody who had committed murder. I would never in my life do that. And so on and so on. All of these different experiences. And I think before that, I had been fairly comfortable in my understanding that people in the public sector were basically slow and lazy. And that people in the third sector basically wore twin set and pearls and were busybodies. And I came away, and it didn't take me, well before I came away, I realised that actually people in the third sector managing without an HR manager and a finance director and the rest of it were far more talented business people than I was. And that people in the public sector, generally speaking, were vocationally driven and exceptionally talented people. So it just shows how probably stupid or naive I was. But I at that time, in my 30s, I guess, late 30s. And that's probably where the rest of this has come from. So I'm fascinated by how the ecosystem all works together. It's exceptionally hard, but I think I've sort of become accidentally, I've developed an understanding of lots and lots of areas without mastering any of them. But I can see how they link together.
Yeah.
And I can see how you can't have a city without culture and the arts. You can't have inward investment without skilled people. All of these bits that go together. And I realised that the centre of my firmament has been of two parts. So one is my family, and the other part has been the firm. My family exists within that ecosystem, and now work and live in that ecosystem. The firm has always had to operate within that ecosystem, and could not afford to be sitting in an ivory tower waiting for grudge purchases to come wandering in through the door. It had to actually insert itself into its community and get known by and trusted and loved by its community to succeed. So that probably where's the foundation of how I operate has come from.
And the last thing you said, they're loved by a community. Wouldn't it be great if MCA was loved by its community?
Yeah.
Every business and organisation want to love.
Loved, because then the brand endures. And if you're loved, well, like a football club, those brands have endured for some of them for 100 years. I mean, Notts County, it's the oldest football club in the country, and it's...
Yeah, my firm's been around 150 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And love is a very important word in it, actually, because love can cover over blemishes.
Yes.
So, in a world where things won't always go right, if your attachment is stronger than just a commercial arrangement, be that MCA, be that Geldards, you've got a far more chance of it enduring than if it's just, I did that job and I'll move on.
And that is, I think, if it, time is going fast, but if
you can see me like...
I know, I mean, that thing about governments being loved and therefore politicians being loved in a way. And I'm just trying to think, nationally, internationally, or locally,
I mean,
whether that's happened or not.
It's a beer and pork scratching conversation, isn't it? In terms of, I can remember when I went to America at 15 and I got into a taxi and we'll come from the airport into Florida, a big fancy holiday. And the taxi driver was like, "Oh my God, Tony Blair, isn't he amazing? Oh, well, I wish we had a president like that in America. He's fantastic." And it's that expression of that real enthusiasm. It's the first time I'd ever heard it. So at 15, quite impressionable. But then that love has changed over time, and as you become more aware. And then we joked about dictatorships. If you're loved, it's...
Well, the love there is very conditional. It's conditional, isn't it? You can display love.
Well, it's sort of like a controlling behaviour, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, exactly that.
So we got to a nice point anyway of ending the podcast in this conversation, which is actually, how do you become loved and part of your community and feel like you've got part of it? And then we come to the final bit, David, where it's like putting you on the spot. What are those 3 radical pieces of change that you could say, right, if this was to happen right now, it would get us to that point? If you cleanse 3 or 4 years' time, we've delivered something, or is there something more wider from what we've talked about today?
I wish I knew. Yeah. I wish I knew. I think we need to be genuinely, honestly, and transparently led. Because if you're not genuine and honest and transparent, which is what I try to be, then I think that there can be no trust. Mm-hmm. And with trust comes confidence. And what most people need, particularly in the world as uncertain as it is now, is a degree of confidence in everything from their potholes being filled to their children being well educated to there being jobs available. But we need just a degree of confidence, and confidence counts for a huge amount. Mm-hmm. So I can't give you those 3 radical things. I'll listen to all your podcasts and see if anybody ever does. But I just pray for a world where we're a lot more honest with each other.